Hello and welcome back to Trauma Monday, as I like to put it now. It is Trauma Monday. We are here with a new episode of To Your Eternity. I am Clockwork Noodles. Hello and welcome. I am loving this series, really loving this series. But before we get to it, make sure you guys are subscribed. I have new content coming your way very shortly. And I have started to peek at the next season. The next season seems to be a bit of a different one. So right now I think we are swimming in amazing talent. Nearly every anime out there is bringing something to the table. Next season looks a bit quieter, so I may have to approach it in a very different way. But for now, make sure you are in the loop. There is a Discord channel for you guys to get notified whenever videos go up on the channel, and a place for you to stay in the loop. There have been a few delays over the past few days, but I think with this now coming out today, I think we're back on it, guys. So let's talk about episode 6, because I was especially excited for episode 6 because my boy finally appearing in his human form, not so much his voice, because he has been there with us from the very beginning, but we actually get a look at his form this week, and it gets a little bit meta. This is our meta episode. This is the episode where we've got to start asking bigger questions than what we're being given. Right now, Fushi has 4 different forms that he can change into. He doesn't want to use the bear because it's pretty much painful. I mean, the bear is riddled in arrows, so I can kind of not blame him for that. When he uses March, so it is a confirmation that he definitely did change into March last week. He's using March because March is nimble, and he also associates Cell being able to gather food. I have been stating that this really reminds me of a game. It really reminds me of the game. Feels like these are the forms that you can pick during a fight, and each one has a different set of abilities when it comes to facing on a boss or just surviving a certain level. Really would love to play this game. If they ever want to make To Your Eternity as a proper game, I am down for that. We do get a nice little peek into Fushi and the way he thinks, the way he experiences this week, and I think it's definitely a quieter episode. It's a quiet episode, a bit of a quiet point after what happened last week. I definitely needed a bit of a break after last week's episode. Fushi actually feeling something. I'm not quite sure what the feeling would be, but when he sees March's bloodstain on the floor, he's still obviously at this point very quiet, but you know, with that face, the facial expressions, the character Fushi is beginning to become a bit more relatable. You can read him, you know what he's thinking, and especially later on during the episode, we actually get to hear our voice actor do some actual voice acting, and I've got something to say about him a little bit later on as well, just because he deserves some credit. We are now following Fushi's relationship with Piran. The relationship between these two is quite a fun one. But seeing her nibbling on Fushi, how desperate she's gotten, it's just, don't nibble on Fushi. Let Fushi decide to get you the food. So we are about to go full circle, and I like the fact that we go full circle because it shows us that Fushi has remembered things, he's actually learnt from his experiences. He uses March to get food. He's able to flip between his different forms very, very easily. Initially, him changing form was maybe a very slow thing, or he'd need to hit a requirement to change a form. Now we're seeing him use it just to benefit himself. He understands that if I change into March, I can get food. If I'm the bear, I really can destroy everything around me. He's got different forms. He does seem to favour the boy and the wolf form more. But we are coming full circle as we see Fushi now in March's role. It's a nice little moment just coming full circle, seeing him taking on March's role, becoming a bit more of a provider. A reverse of the sequence where he first ever met March. If this was a game, we're now going into a different skill tree. Fushi is about to become literate in a sense. He shows extreme interest in the writing, the communication, which I think also might be down to March, because March showed interest in writing. March wanted to be able to communicate. March also wanted to bring writing to the continent that she was living in. So I think this might come down to her desires as well. I do also wonder if the entire region we're in, the world that we're in, do they speak and write the same language? Because he's going to be learning the language of Takuna, which is our new continent, what we're introduced to. So whether this is the same language that Yanami also speaks, whether the people of Ninaha, these people also speak in at least the same language, because they all seem to understand one another. The relationship between Fushi and Piran is a nice one. It's a teacher-student. She's obviously using him for protection, but at the same time, she's not just taking. She is giving back. She's teaching him words. We're at the point where a student may go in and start learning all the vocabulary. We can't really string together sentences, but we're learning the world around us. Fushi gets to understand how his name looks, what March's name looks like, understanding the things around him, what he's actually eating, giving him a bit more of an understanding of the world that he really lives in. Fushi showing us the capacity to learn and mimic. He mimics the writing he sees. He's able to mimic the words that he can hear. Whether this means he's also understanding what it is he's saying, that could be another level entirely. But he does seem to be able to match up, this is a fish, this is a food, this is what I eat. But he is starting to talk, and I am absolutely happy to hear our boy now becoming more vocal, giving him a bit more of a personality, because hearing him talk starts to give him a bit more of a human element that us as an audience can relate to. We also understand him better because he starts to communicate. Quickly about the voice actor. The voice actor, when I first did a research, he hasn't been in a great deal. He seems pretty much new to the voice acting territory. However, you can go and see him also airing this season in another anime, that is Shadow's House. He is playing the role of Patrick, quite a change on the loving sweet Fushi that we have. Patrick is a complete 360 on that, but it is a great anime. I definitely recommend you check out Shadow's House if you haven't already. It is a very intriguing anime which isn't giving much away. Right now, I'd say that Piran is very lucky. She has a pet parrot who is mimicking all of her words. That seems to be where Fushi is at the moment. Last time I said March had a dog. This time he's a parrot, he's mimicking, he's picking up all the words around him. I just hope that Piran doesn't accidentally drop an F-bomb or anything, because I think Fushi would then start repeating that. That would be interesting. We get to see their journey, the journey of them attempting to get to her hometown, the town over the sea. So we seem to be leaving continents now, leaving Ninaha behind us. Our story over there for now is done. We're not going back for a bit, but we're learning all this vocab. Fushi starts to communicate, and this gets so exciting. He starts to ask questions. This really does feel like a complete level up. We actually start to get a small conversation. It's very basic conversation, but it's a conversation nonetheless. The most we've ever learned from Fushi as himself. Him asking questions, him being curious about the world around him, him actually telling Piran about the boy that he met before. He doesn't know who he is, but he remembers the shapes. We get to understand how he sees the world. Him also repeating March's motto, the idea of growing up is to learn. He does remember her. He also remembers her desire to grow up and become an adult, which is where he also has this desire to grow up, which also might be leaning into when I said that I think him having an interest in writing and communication may be part of what he saw March doing, because we did see him stare at her when she got very sad, realising that she may never see them again, or she may not be able to communicate with her parents. So whether this is coming through, that he can share their experiences, their desires. He doesn't remember the first boy's name. We were never really given it. I like the fact that he doesn't just come up with something and suddenly there's a name given when there was never a name given. The original boy doesn't have a name. He is just a boy that we spent time with and we all cried over initially. But he is a very important stepping stone, that beginning of a journey for Fushi. Piran asking the questions actually allows us, the audience, to start also learning about Fushi. So we're finally getting into a conversation. We're finally starting to understand the way that he experiences the world, the shapes, the sounds. He doesn't understand these things that he's going through, but he is picking it up. He's learning like a child would. Like they learn through sounds and sights, and initially as a baby they put things in their mouths because they're learning about things. They're getting information from this. Our mid-credit board has expanded. March and the bear are now on the board. I think this is like Fushi's wall of faces. Maybe it's also his wall of, these are all the forms that I can take. It is also interesting to note that all the forms that he can take are dead. So it seems like a requirement to change form is it's from a person who is dead, which I think is actually nice because it eradicates the idea of paradoxes, having two of the same person standing in the same place at once. I like this little rule that comes into play, but it is nice because this is Fushi's wall of faces. It mimics the original boy in the first episode, with him remembering all of the people around him, all the villagers that he wanted to remember. Fushi's way of remembering, even though it's not in the physical, it's just the midway credit scene, but it looks like it's the same kind of idea. We are entering a new chapter. We have a new continent called Takuna, and we actually learned that they are at war with Yaname. So Yaname is going to be our key that stays the same. We've heard this name before. They were a key prominent role in March's demise. They're back again, but this time we are fighting the anime. So we're told that they're constantly at war. They're constantly standing up for themselves. So we're not being oppressed, we're standing up. It's a nice way of showing that the world that we're in is connected. Everything is in one place. So whether anybody knows about the original boy and who he was and where he came from, it would be very interesting to see how anyone would react to this original story. Now, the narrator, let's go into the bit I've been waiting for. Narrator, my boy, Kenjiro Suda, he's here. He reacts to the very odd occurrence, which tells us that he's always watching. At every single point, like us, he's watching everything that's going on. Him appearing at this next moment of time, him actually stating that it's something that he doesn't quite understand, I think it shows that there's things that even he fears, even he is aware of, that he physically needs to appear at this point because he realizes the danger of what really is happening. Fushi starting to lose the ability to turn into forms. So really putting out some danger, really starting to change the game. You can imagine if you were playing this game, this level, this boss fight, it would get very confusing because you can no longer transform it into a boy and then it's a wolf and then you can't turn into this. It really shifts up the level of difficulty in the fight. It also makes it very interesting to play because you would have to make the most of a certain form, knock out some of those hit points, and then use a new form and adjust your fighting style accordingly. So this new being, this power, this thing that we're not quite 100% on what it is, it has the ability to steal his vessels, steal his experiences, steal the memories. So we see him trying to remember the boy and he can't put a face on the boy. He only sees a white figure of where he was. That is a very scary ability to have. Our narrator finally appearing. I am so excited. He has been teased in the credits though, so I knew what he looked like initially. But he has the power to stop time. I wasn't quite sure what he was, and I still don't feel 100% calling him a god because I feel like he might have godlike powers, but I don't want to say he's a god when he may not be a god. He certainly has some very unique powers. Fushi can definitely hear him. And we get quite a few of those philosophical questions starting to be asked, and that's a new dynamic on him as a character, the narrator and how he sees things, and the idea of asking Fushi, how do you feel? You've lost something, you've lost a part of you. What is this feeling of emptiness? It's the idea that he's asking all those very tricky questions that there to get you thinking, there to also help Fushi start to think. Him giving the Fushi advice finally, this is your enemy, you have to win. This is, again, the moment when the game starts to give you a new objective, but it shows us that the narrator understands the danger of the enemy that is at hand. He can't take it lightly. He actually needs to give Fushi some advice because I guess it's probably not difficult for him to make another orb, but this orb's already got a lot of experience, and if he suddenly loses all that experience, he's going to go back to square one. Him giving Fushi advice, showing us the proper danger that is involved in this next sequence of the fight against something, and I don't know what that something is. Perhaps it's another god. As he does say at the end that they're trying to get in the way of his grand goal. Perhaps it's another god with powers like him who's able to do something similar. This being able to damage and designed to even weaken Fushi means that whatever it is knows about Fushi, what Fushi is, and is able to even combat what Fushi is. This thing apparently is a failure. It can't become an animal, but it can still form. So it's maybe another god who can't quite match up to the powers of our narrator. And this is the best he can do. And he has to rely on stealing experience, stealing memories. But it is a battle of losses. So Fushi again loses through death. This anime is a cycle. It is a cycle of learning through dying. Every time Fushi has died, he has gained experience, he's gained understandings. He also learns via the death of the people around him, where he's able to gain vessels and experience. It is a never-ending cycle. If I had to say the main theme of this anime, it is the cycle of death and life and rebirth and the idea of learning. This anime is just a giant metaphor for the idea of life and how we learn. You have to make mistakes to learn. So whenever anyone feels angry about making a mistake, you need to change the perspective and see what you've learned from making a mistake, because you do learn through your mistakes. I think that is a nice little motive that the anime is trying to give us. It did raise the question, what happens if Fushi loses all his vessels? What happens if he'd lost? Because he gets right down to his final form. He only has March left. What happens if March had died at that point as well? Would he just become a simple orb? Would the orb be destroyed? What would happen to the monster that he's fighting? Can this monster also fight the humans of the world? Because Piran definitely reacts. She asks, "What are you? Why do you look like Fushi?" Ultimately, we do win, but it was very, very close. It was very, very last minute. March is dragged away, I think, theoretically by this monster itself. And that act of dragging away is what actually severs the heart. I guess it's the heart, the core of this monster. Seeing that smile, that happiness of finally reclaiming those memories, that is a really nice moment. Seeing Fushi being able to remember again, being able to reclaim all those forms that he lost, all the people that he lost, because these vessels are also a way of remembering the people that have had an impact, have learned and have been nice to him, have fed him, or have given him experience and a life experience. I really like that little way of just the fact that he's reclaimed those people again. They're back in his memories. The narrator, I love him to pieces, giving us the grand objective of his. He wants to preserve this world, so he's trying to save it from something. I already knew that Fushi could hear the narrator. It was a spoiler when I was accidentally trying to research a little bit on the narrator. Fushi can hear the narrator. As we've also seen, the narrator was able to force Fushi to change shapes at one point. But something wants to get in the way of his objective to preserve the world. So what is this something? Is it something, again, on the same level as him, who's able to provide a challenge, provide a counter to the kind of powers that the narrator has? But he does say he's coming back at some point. So I'm very excited to see that the narrator will be making another entrance at some point on the screens. But he does say that the coming end, whether it means that Fushi eventually will die, whether he's going to die, whether the world's going to die, are we trying to stop this world from ending? There's a lot of different what ifs and question marks I've now got because it's very, very vague, but really, really enjoyed it because this is the episode that starts to ask bigger questions. It starts to put a few things into perspective. We know that we've got a big overarching goal now. We understand the narrator a little bit more at some point. We've at least seen him at this point, and we know that he has been forced to show himself when there was the worry or the danger of actually losing Fushi. So welcome to the next character who is going to make us all cry very, very shortly. He is in the end credit display of the characters in the row. He was the one after March. We see his helmet. So it's the helmet we see at the end. So yes, if we're going by the end credits symbolizing the people who are going to die, this guy's going to die too. It's just, again, a matter of when, a matter of how. Are you going to be able to make me connect to this character? Because he's a character who's wearing a mask. And generally, masked characters can be quite hard to connect with physically because you can't read their expressions. So I'm going to be very interested to see how the anime builds up my connection to this guy. I'm calling him Gecko Boy, but he's apparently called Gugu. That's his name, but I'm calling him Gecko Boy because the hat looks like a gecko. It's got a gecko on it. The preview shows them interacting, him learning as well, and Fushi seemingly getting a bit of a brother in his life. Maybe that is what Gecko Boy is to him, where they're going to be learning new things. We've got a new character, new world. This is our new arc. If anything, this episode serves as a transition to this next arc, but also throws in some very important business with the narrator. Gives us a bit more of a fear that there's something out there that could probably end Fushi if they really wanted to. I really enjoyed today's episode. I thought it was really good. I can't wait to see where we're going next. This anime seems to have a bit of a knack for helping us connect to its characters, so I really can't wait to start learning about Gecko Boy and understanding what his deal is and what it is that he wants to do and how he has an impact on our boy as well. What can Fushi now learn? His vocab is only just going to get better and better, so very excited to finally hear him talking. That is a huge step in the right direction. Seeing the interactions as well between the narrator and him, that's a new step in some direction of some sort. Very excited. I really am enjoying To Your Eternity. And I'm also really glad that we don't have to worry about the end of the season because we're going to roll over into the next season. So you guys already know that this is at least one of the animes I am definitely going to be breaking down next season. I've got to really sit down and actually have a look at next season properly because at the moment I've only got 2 animes that I'm going to be breaking down. So need to have a look at next season properly. I hope you guys are enjoying this season, and this time I don't have to offer you any e-hugs because there's nothing really sad about this episode. The support group is closed for today, so make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.